This episode of Coffee with Kenobi is dedicated to the memory of Tom Kane. Rest in peace, dear friend. Thank you for all you've done for Star Wars fans and for Coffee with Kenobi. And now, on to the show.
This is Tom Kane, the voice of Yoda in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
But I love a Star Wars fan to be able to bring somebody, especially somebody who's maybe 12 years old now, maybe they were a little too young 7 years ago to go to Star Wars. I want to bring the next generation in, too.
For the movies.
I feel like your relationship with Grogu has evolved organically.
It started out very reluctantly and then deeply, deeply bonded. It was the coolest set I've ever been on.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Coffee with Kenobi, your family-friendly, spoiler-free Star Wars podcast, where intelligent conversation and a splash of humor bring fans together from across the galaxy. I'm your host, Dan Zare, educator and Star Wars author. Whether you're a lifelong Jedi Master or just hopped off your first Star Cruiser, grab your cafe and join us as we explore the mythology, philosophy, and wonder of a galaxy far, far away. One conversation at a time. Coffee with Kenobi is more than a podcast. It's a community. Together we celebrate the people, stories, and experiences that make Star Wars so special, creating a space where fans can come together and share their voices. Thank you to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI Travel and Mouse Fan Travel. Check out coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel for a no-cost, no-obligation quote, and let them know Coffee with Kenobi and Dan Zare sent you. I'd like to throw an extra special thank you to MEI Travel and Mouse Fan Travel for sponsoring my trip to California and making my hotel experience so much easier so I could plan on all the things that I'm going to share with you on today's podcast. Again, check out coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel. What a show we have for you today. This is the entire experience of Mason and I going to California, going to the special set visit the night before, seeing the movie twice, including the Hollywood red carpet premiere, and all the people we talked to, spoke with, and all the amazing experiences that come with an event of this caliber. I really want to bring you along with me, so buckle up. We're going to have some fun. Pull up a chair, grab your favorite mug, and let's have coffee with Kenobi. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to a surprise episode of Coffee with Kenobi. I'm your host, Dan Zare. I've got two esteemed guests with me. We are in California, in Hollywood, for the Mandalorian and Grogu Hollywood red carpet premiere. Let's bring in our co-host for this segment. First, Mason Zare.
Hey, it's great to be back on the show.
And also, from Jedi News, the one and only James Burns.
Hello there.
Aha. So, Mason, this is your very first time ever to California. What do you think so far?
It's amazing, and I can't wait to see the premiere.
Yeah, exactly. So, this kind of all happened quickly. Without getting into too many specifics, but it happened very quickly. We've got an exciting event tonight.
Yes, we do.
This is Wednesday, the 13th. So we're going to have more. Hopefully you have noticed it by now on our social media accounts, both Jedi News and Coffee with Kenobi. But James, you had a pretty cool experience just a few days ago at London, sort of a fan fest. Go ahead and share with us a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, so on May the 7th, they did the Mandalorian and Grogu World Tour that's going around the world, as the name implies, and it hit London. And they did this huge press opportunity, so with red carpet with Kathleen Kennedy, with Jon Favreau, with Pedro Pascal, and also with Sigourney Weaver. And there were press opportunities for people could meet them, greet them, they signed stuff, and it was really exciting. And then everyone went inside, and there was a Q&A for about 15 minutes, which we put up on Jedi News, so you can actually go and watch that and hear all the questions that they asked. And after that, we got the first 20 minutes of The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Wow, and of course you're not allowed to say anything, but you're still smiling, so that's good.
I'm still smiling. It went very, very quickly. So that was really positive. And then the following day, Disney invited us to a really small event in London near Tottenham Court Road. and we were told that Grogu would be there, and we'd get an opportunity to see Grogu in real life, as it were. And unbeknownst to us, there were a couple of other guests who turned up, Jon Favreau and Pedro Pascal. And we got some time with them, and we got photos with them, and it was a real surprise, and it was really nice to spend some time with them.
Wow, that's so cool. And I'm assuming you've got photos of that on social media?
Yes. Yeah.
And so for people who have never met Jon Favreau and Pedro Pascal, which is most people, what are they like?
Well, John's really, really nice. I've actually sat down and interviewed John previously in London for Mandalorian Season 3, and he was really, really personable. And as you know, in these round tables, there's a set amount of time, and there was 3 of us interviewing John, and we'd done one round of questions, and John turned around to the handler and said, "I'm carrying on. Just tell everyone else that we're overrunning and I'm enjoying myself. I'm talking to real fans. I want to carry on," which was really, really positive and just shows you the sort of person he is. And he really wants to spend time and get to know you, to answer your questions and to hear from you as well. And he was exactly the same when I met him in London last week. Really nice, only too happy to sign things for people that wanted them to be signed and to pose for photos. And I did say that I would be seeing him again in LA this week. So here we are.
I love it. So let's talk about our level of excitement for the movie itself. We are going to get to see it tonight for a very special screening the night before the premiere, which is quite unusual, but we're not complaining. It's fabulous.
No, it's a bit odd.
It's crazy, but it's so fun. Mason, obviously this is your first time doing this kind of thing. What are you looking forward to? Give me your level of excitement for seeing this movie.
I'm really looking forward to all of it, just seeing who's going to show up that we aren't expecting, and probably like a 10 out of 10 excitement.
Okay. And you did some homework on the plane, although you, of course, have seen all the Mandalorian seasons. You've seen the Book of Boba Fett. You've seen Ahsoka. You've seen it all. What did you do to kind of refresh yourself, and what did you learn or remember that was pretty cool and made you even more excited?
I watched some of the Mandalorian episodes, and I forgot that Grogu was now known as Din Grogu because he's Mando's apprentice.
That's right, and that's a pretty cool thing. I'm really looking forward to how they continue the lore. So what I'm hoping for is something that is somewhere around seasons 1 and 2 of Atmosphere, because that hit much more personably to me than season 3.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Season 3 was good, but I think it was a bit too gimmicky, and especially when it came to some of the special guests and some of the other things that went on. I like you, I much prefer season 1 and season 2. So from what I've seen those first 20 minutes, it is very much like season 1 and season 2. So let's hope it stays that way.
Okay, this is the way, as they say. So much more to come. Stay tuned, everybody. All right, hello, everybody. We are back, and we have had quite an evening. We are sitting in the Lowe's Hollywood Hotel. It's been a long day. We're waiting for some DoorDash to have some food, but we want to tell you what happened. We spent an incredible evening. You've seen our experience on social media by this time, no doubt. James, what do we get to see?
Well, we went to Jon Favreau's studios, where the Mandalorian series and the film and Skeleton Crew and the first series of Ahsoka were all produced. So that was pretty incredible, actually. We got to see sets and costumes and props just all come to life.
Not to mention, speaking of that, we got to sit in the Razor Crest that's used in the Mandalorian and Grogu film.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty... I mean, everything about it was incredible, but seeing some of those props and just walking into this like Aladdin's cave of the good and the great from Star Wars over, the Disney Plus era, effectively.
That's an excellent way to describe it. And then we also got to be a part of a Q&A that was really, really fun with John Knoll and Doug Chang and Ludwig Göransson and some other talented people that work.
The prop master on The Mandalorian.
Yes, just a lot of really talented people. It was a very, very small, intimate affair. I would guess there was probably no more than 60 to 70 people. Super excited and honored to be a part of it. And then they took us on a shuttle over to the IMAX
HQ.
IMAX HQ, and we watched the night before the premiere, The Mandalorian and Grogu. We're not going to spoil it. Although by the time you listen to this, you may have already seen the film. No, you won't have seen the film. And we're not going to spoil it, and we're going to have a more detailed review later. But just kind of immediate thoughts.
It was a lovely, lovely film. There's some really heartwarming moments with Grogu.
Yes, there are some things in here that are going to be classic, and it's very endearing and very, very sweet. And I would say it's more along the lines of the tone of seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, which is what I was hoping, and I absolutely got that. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. It very much comes across that way, and it does leave you with a warm and fuzzy feeling. It's the beginning is completely action packed.
There's some really cool moments, as I said. Now, are you going to ask me where does it rank? It's way too early to know something like that. We're going to see it at the premiere also. So we'll save that, and I want to see what Mason thinks. But it's a very, very late night. We haven't even had dinner yet. We just really want to come on and just say that we had a great time. The sound was awesome.
The music is absolutely incredible.
Yes.
There's some moments where I just can't wait to hear that soundtrack because, the music is absolutely stunning. Ludwig's done it again.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome. We got a chance to spend a few moments speaking with him at this little get-together, which is really, really great. We want to thank Disney and Lucasfilm for allowing us to be a part of this. It was really, really fun. I'm glad that I got to experience it with you, too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always best when you do it with people that you love and respect. So to do it with each other is amazing. There were other people there that, people are aware of.
I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this is literally the first time I've sat in a movie theater next to James for a Star Wars film.
Have we never done that?
No.
Wow, no, it's true.
Yeah, because we've been at premieres together, but they have assigned seating for those.
That's true.
And you could be all over the place. And you're probably thinking, okay, they're being vague. Yes, we are.
Deliberately.
We're still under a lot of embargoes when I'm recording this, and we're men of our word. But we're going to talk a lot about it. We're going to hear a lot about it. But suffice to say, it's a good, rollicking, fun time at the movies.
Absolutely, and I'm happy to come back and talk more about it as well, so we can share our thoughts together. Look, it's The Mandalorian and Grogu. What's not to love? It's a great film, and it's a great family film. I think there's a lot. Mason really, really enjoyed it.
Agreed. All right, more to come.
I'm Kogan. I'm an editor at StarWars.com, and I am so excited to be here with some of the brilliant creative minds behind Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu. We have composer Ludwig Göransson, production designers Doug Chang and Andrew L. Jones, prop master Josh Roth, and visual effects supervisor John Knoll. Thank you guys all so much for joining me. I'm so excited to get to talk to you a little bit about this incredible film and pick your brains about bringing it to life. Ludwig, I'd love to start with you. You, of course, worked on the Mandalorian TV series, writing the now iconic theme song. What was different about coming from the TV space into telling the story as a film?
Well, I feel like the way that I always thought about it, and John too, was we always kind of thought about it as a cinematic story, and the amount of time and love that we put in this 8 years ago, which is kind of feels crazy to say it was 8 years ago. And so going back to this universe now, 8 years later, I just, it was kind of like meeting, one of my best friends again, because I just love it so much. So being able to have all this time, when you're working on a feature and in a movie like this, you have more time. The scenes are longer. It's a bigger scope, bigger movie. And also, with the sound in a theater, and it was just like a dream to be able to do it. And I was kind of surprised with how much I missed this music in this universe.
Were there any specific instruments or unconventional inspirations you were thinking about as you were working on this?
We got to work with a much larger orchestra. We got to work with a large choir, and I also used all my recorders that I have still at my studio, especially the bass recorder, which you hear from the very beginning of the first episode, that sound kind of became iconic for Mandalorian, and some of the bells, more of the bells, Celeste and Glockenspiel for Grogu and Rhodes. So it was just really fun to kind of go back to that playful universe, but it's playful, but it's now, we're at a different level now where, we're the story kind of changes a little bit, so.
Absolutely. And Doug, you're somebody who has a really long Star Wars legacy, going all the way back to Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, working with George Lucas. Absolutely. I'm curious, what from that experience have you continued to, kind of carry with you? And, did any of that inform, your journey on this film?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been very fortunate to be working and designing this universe for over 30 years. And I have to say, the process hasn't changed much at all, because, it all started with George, and he was very specific in sort of making sure that the art always starts with the writing. And that's been the process, with Jon Favreau and all of our other filmmakers as well. And that's the great thing about Star Wars, is that, it is a singular vision from the director, and you really have to kind of see it through all the different phases. And so for me, it's, the process has been consistent, even though there's new filmmakers. And what I enjoy most about working with Jon Favreau is that he is a like mind of George in some ways, in many ways actually, in terms of their process and their creative storytelling. And it's just so enjoyable to be able to still be playing in this universe and sort of expanding it.
Absolutely. And Andrew, you've worked closely with Doug, for many years before joining The Mandalorian. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of your creative partnership and how you guys work together?
Sure. It's been wonderful working with Doug since 2002, I think. I can't remember.
Yes.
Way back. But it's the thing I really enjoy about working with Doug is I love his visions, and in production design, there's sort of two sides to it. You have to come up with an idea for how you're gonna tell the story, and then you got to figure out how you're gonna do that, how you're gonna make it and get it onto the screen. And Doug is more on the what side, and I'm more on the how side, and so that's why I think we have a relationship that works. And right from the get-go on Polar Express was the first show we worked on. I've had a sort of a rapport with Doug.
What would you talked about the how of building some of these amazing sets, one of which we get to see here today. What was the most challenging thing you had to work on for this film specifically?
So for the film, there was sets that were just so much bigger, but at the same time, we were dealing with a lot of puppets. So we had these huge sets that were lasted much longer in the build stage, but we were also having to elevate them so puppeteers could get underneath them, and spaceships that would go wild apart so the puppeteers could get in. It's really fun working with puppeteers and all of their challenges, but that made it really interesting, especially on a project of this scale.
Absolutely. And Star Wars is something that is so visually diverse. Every corner of the galaxy has its own visual language, but there is a cohesiveness kind of across the galaxy and what feels like Star Wars. Doug, are there certain visual elements that you just feel like Star Wars and feel consistent across this galaxy?
There are, and a lot of it, I have to say, comes from sort of George's lessons that I've learned. And honestly, 80% of it has to be anchored in our real world. So if you look at it, it feels very ordinary. And part of our job, for Andrew and myself, is to sort of hide the scenes, hide the construction, so that the audience never really, sees it as an artificial world. We try to make the artificial feel very natural. And so in doing all of that, it's actually remarkable in the sense that Star Wars still has this component of fresh and new. And so, Star Wars design for me is really taking what we know and turning it on its head, adding that 20%, whether it's exaggeration of scale, combining different cultures, combining different times, different eras, different aesthetics. And that's what makes us special. So we always try to keep an eye on that. And that's one of our biggest jobs, between Andrew and I, and all of us really, is to sort of make sure that we're pushing the boundaries of Star Wars aesthetic while not breaking it. Because it is a very specific universe. If you tip over a little too far, it's another film, another genre. And so it's very important where, that's where, working with Jon Favreau now and Dave Filoni, it's really critical that we kind of preserve that, universe, because it's very unique.
Absolutely. And Josh, you've been a part of The Mandalorian since the beginning, and you are responsible for so many of the amazing objects that we see behind us in this room. Can you talk a little bit about some of your favorites that are in the room behind us?
Okay, so so I've been fortunate to be there since season 1. So I love making all the different weapons, all the different foods. You know, a lot of it's coming from Doug's and his team. Their different designs. I really am happy with Rada's axes. Those are something that was really fun. And even though Rada's a full CG character, I know that helps John when we make something for real. Then we can have it on set. We can see lighting reference, and it helps the stunt actor when they're performing. So Rada's axes, I'm really happy with. I'm also really happy with Zeb's bow rifle. So it's always fun to take something from animation, and that's where we get to work with Dave and making sure we pass Dave's litmus test, which is challenging sometimes, but it's so much fun. We did that with the Darksaber in the TV show, and then to make the bow rifle for the film.
That's amazing. And Star Wars obviously has a long history of taking ordinary objects and reimagining them in fun and creative ways. Are there any examples of that on this film that you're really excited about?
Trying to think about that. We do follow the same aesthetic where we do base layers, whether it's for data pads or for weapons or for different objects. We'll find something, especially if it's from the 70s or World War I or World War II, we get that, like you're saying, get that the grounding in the real world, and then add the Greeblies on top. But I'm trying to think. I don't have an example right now. I'm sorry.
Tommy gun.
Oh, well, the Tommy gun is good. Okay, so Shikari is we go to Shikari, and when we're talking about Shikari, and again we were developing it, we talked about the Chicago and like Prohibition and the kind of the gangsters of that. And so when I think of that, I think of always a Tommy gun with you have the drum magazine underneath. And we found a French World War I machine gun called the Shaw, and it doesn't have a drum magazine left and right, but it has a drum magazine front and back. So it gives that appearance where it's still real, but it changes it perspective, and it gives you that Star Wars touch to it. Then we added the Greeblies on top, added a Star Wars scope, and I thought it came out awesome. So that was seen with the Commander Point.
And it's inside.
It's inside.
That is so cool to really transform it and make it Star Wars. And John, you're a visual effects legend who is such a fundamental part of this series. And Josh talked about one of the big things about the Star Wars history is taking traditional practical filmmaking techniques and marrying it with cutting-edge digital technology. Can you talk a little bit about how that tradition continues on this film?
This film is a pretty broad sampling of technology, all the way from some of the earliest Willis O'Brien stop motion kind of stuff, all the way up to some of the latest developments in computer graphics. It's been tremendously fun to play with a lot of the different techniques. If you look I think in the front of that room, there are 2 stop motion puppet droids there that are featured in a pretty extensive, complicated fight scene that Mando has with these droids. Classic stop motion, like right out of King Kong. We built a 4-foot long Razor Crest miniature. You see it in that room over there. The one that we built originally for the TV show was 2 feet long. So this is meant to hold up for much closer views. I shot a lot more miniature shots of it in the film. So, and something I've wanted to do since season 1, but we didn't have the time or the budget for it, is that's a bare metal spaceship. It's all about reflections. In the same way that Mando's helmet is all about reflections. How do you put him in a novel environment? Use this LED volume so you're reflecting all the right things. So I wanted to build a LED volume for shooting miniatures, and on this show I got to build one. So I built an 8-foot by 8-foot by 8-foot cubic volume for the miniature. And it's a real game changer. I got some really gorgeous elements of that are all throughout the film. When you see the Razor Crest flying, a lot of the time that's that 4-foot long miniature shot in the LED volume.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to ask you about, because I know on a TV series you built the motion control rig for the Razor Crest. Tell me a little bit about bringing the ship to life in this film.
Well, we wanted to do more. I was always very limited by the budget we had available for the TV show and to schedule. The start to finish we had to be done in a year, and we had close to 2 years on this picture. So I had a little bit more linear time to do it. A little bit better budget to work with to allow for a more extensive miniature build. And that we ended up building 2 Razor Crest miniatures. One that was another 24-inch model that is the clean version of it. It's a different Razor Crest. It's new and restored. And then we built a 48-inch model for close-up shots where you see it parked on the Adelphi base, close shots where it's flying by camera and flying in atmosphere in that LED volume.
That is so cool. And I wanted to open up a question to anybody who wants to answer. When you think about this process, was there a day on set or a day during the production that is most memorable for you, good or bad?
Sigourney Weaver showing up on set was a lot of fun. Obviously, she's got an amazing history. I got to know her as an actor from Aliens, and then in Avatar and Galaxy Quest. And, that was great. That was a real treat to have her be part of Star Wars.
Actually, it's John's fault for my story. So the first week, we were driving the mouse droid. And it was so much fun. We had the polar mouse droid, and I practiced all the moves. We talked about this is where it's going to go this way, and then we did awesome hallways that we built. But John kept saying, go faster, go faster, go faster. And there's no guardrails in space. So unfortunately, at one point, the mouse droid just went off the edge. But it survived. So that was stressful. The first week of shooting, but it worked around.
We had in our largest stage, we built a jungle, which took a long time to build, and it had to be like Dagobah. We had to have areas a bit elevated to get people underneath, and it just took on a life of its own and started growing mushrooms in there, and really became beautiful, and people would go and hang out there. But the first day we got in to shoot there, we came in, the water's moving, and there's a couple of raccoons moving. Kind of interesting.
I mean, for me, it's really just, the fact that we actually brought designs that I, helped create like 30 years ago and bringing it to the modern audience. Like the B1 battle droids now have been revamped, bringing the Staps back, bringing the N1 back, bringing all these classic designs. And I think what's really great for me about this film is that, Jon Favreau has actually created a cohesive universe now. Fulfilling George's vision, really, to make sure that all the films, from the prequels to the original trilogy to the sequel films, to present day are all one universe. And I mean, to me, actually, being on set every day was just a treat.
I think one of my favorite parts was when I went to set one time to visit John, and I go in there and there's a jungle. I get lost in this jungle, and it was huge. It's massive. It was so big. I've never seen a set like that. And I go in between some palm trees or whatever, and I see little Grogu sitting there on a log. It just kind of felt so magical, like seeing your work and being there in person. That was pretty cool.
It's like literally stepping onto another planet as it is walking through these amazing sets. Well, thank you guys so much, and thank you all so much for being here.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, everybody. We are back home from an incredible experience in Hollywood, California. I am here with Mason Zaire.
Hey, it's great to be on the show.
It's great to be on with you. Look, we had an amazing experience, and now that we are home, we're going to kind of unpack it and talk about it. Let's talk about, first of all, your level of excitement for even going to California, because this was new for you.
Yeah, it was easily a 10 out of 10. I mean, as soon as we arrived, I could tell the weather was amazing, and I was just so ready.
And I told you, hey, there's no humidity here.
Yeah, that was probably the best part.
I agree with that. So we landed. We had a really long day. We landed, and we had basically an hour before we had to get to our first experience. So we got to the hotel in about a half hour. We had a half hour to get ready, and then we met James Burns from Jedi News in the lobby, and we went to our first destination. The first destination, we were told, was a Star Wars The Mandalorian and Grogu tour, and we were told to expect an up-close exploration of a perfectly preserved film set, practical props, droids, and creatures featured in The Mandalorian and Grogu. Joining us, and basically you go in there, and there's a big courtyard, and there's some food and some appetizers, and there's a bar to get drinks if you wanted some. So as soon as we walked in there, we were surprised to meet the guest of honor. Who was that?
The Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian was there for pictures, and he had Grogu on his shoulder, and it was an incredible likeness. And so we did some pictures individually, and then we did one together. And how much fun was that?
It was very fun.
Yeah, Grogu was looking at us and making a bunch of noises and things like that. And then also there were a number of peers. Actually, it was a very, very small gathering, I would say. What did you expect before we even got there?
I really expected there to be like, not really a full scene of stuff, but just like a few props. But then we got there and it was just amazing.
So yeah, there's this building that you go in, the windows are darkened, and you walk in, and you've seen a number of the pictures on Coffee with Kenobi's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts. But essentially, it had the N1 Starfighter. It had just about every creature head you can imagine from all 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, from The Mandalorian and Grogu, and also from the Book of Boba Fett. There was a side room that had a number of the weapons from all of these things, and also the armorer's props and tools that she uses. There was also the Mandalorian himself, just like the armor. You could see Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, Paz Vizsla. And then we also had, I think the highlight for me, well, actually I have a couple highlights. So what were some that stood out to you?
Mine was being on the actual set of like the bar that they were in.
Yeah, we definitely had that. There's a whole separate room, which is the New Republic bar hangout, and you've seen it in season 3 of The Mandalorian, and you're going to see it in The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is not a spoiler because that is in the trailers themselves. But this is the actual set. We got to go behind the bar. We got to sit at the different tables. In fact, I believe that Mason sat. Where did you sit at the table?
I sat right where the Mandalorian sat in the movie.
Yeah, the exact actual spot. I think I sat in Sigourney Weaver's area. We got to take a lot of pictures and take some really, really cool videos. And just knowing that you're in and on an actual film set where they filmed this was absolutely incredible. It was well lit. It was beautiful. And because there was such a small amount of people there, we got the whole thing to ourselves. But inside the prop room itself was something that we haven't touched on yet. And I think this was a highlight for me. This was the Razor Crest from The Mandalorian and Grogu. This was a prop, obviously, but this is the one used in the filming of this movie. So Mason and I got to sit in the cockpit, take turns behind the pilot's chair, sitting in the seat where Grogu sat. And there was someone on hand, a Disney cast member, who took pictures and video for us. And that was just absolutely amazing. What did you think about that whole thing?
It was cool to like imagine yourself in the place of the Mandalorian and that he actually was there and did that.
Right. So this, again, knowing that you're actually in the same vehicle itself. And a lot of it is done background, of course, with special effects, but the cockpit itself was right there, and they let Mason went first, and then I got on and we got to do some father-son stuff, and then I did some stuff solo by myself. You can see all those images online. But also joining us at this reception were Ludwig Göransson, who of course does the music, Doug Chang, production designer, I don't tell you who he is, Andrew Jones, who's another production designer, John Roth, the prop master, and John Knoll, VFX supervisor and legend, just mingling with us. And we spent a lot of time with Ludwig Göransson. What did you think he was like?
He was really nice, and obviously the music is amazing.
Yeah, we got the chance to thank him for creating a theme to The Mandalorian and all the atmosphere he does to make that character and that whole world come to life. I talked to him about Sinners and a lot about Black Panther. He was very patient and gracious. And then the next night at the premiere, he remembered us and came up and chatted with us. And that was pretty cool. I think that was an absolute highlight for me. The whole thing was just an amazing experience. We're very grateful to Lucasfilm and Disney for inviting us to be a part of that. But it was, I mean, you've never seen anything like that. Did it exceed your expectations?
Yeah, very much. I mean, I knew it was going to be amazing, but it was just the best.
Yeah, I mean, we had a good hour or so just to kind of enjoy it. And this is Jon Favreau's like actual personal collection, I believe. So really, really neat. But we didn't have too much time to celebrate because it was time to get on the bus. We went over to the IMAX headquarters, the actual IMAX headquarters, and we got to see the movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu, the night before the premiere. So James and I touched on it very briefly, but without any spoilers. What did you think of the movie overall, that whole experience in the IMAX headquarters?
Honestly, it was a lot of fun. Obviously, like I said before, the music was amazing, and it was action-packed.
And it was fun for me because it was probably about 60 people or less in the theater. It was all press, a couple of different podcasters, including Sky Talkers and James Burns and Talking Bay 94, among a few others. One half of Skywalking Through Neverland was there with us. And before it started, Mason said to me, are there going to be trailers or things like that? And I said, no, they just jump right in. And that's exactly what they did. So we'll talk more about even more impressions of the movie after we talk about the premiere itself. But it was a long day. We went home to the hotel itself. We were starving, so we did some DoorDash. James and I talked. Next morning, we got up. I knew I was going to be a part of a really special interview with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, but we had a few hours to kind of kill. So I showed him basically Hollywood itself. Hollywood is very unique. What do you want to say about Hollywood?
It's nice, like what you can do there, and it can be a lot of fun.
Right. We took a lot of video and things like that. I showed him some of the Hollywood stars. Do you remember some of the ones we saw?
I know we saw Michael Jackson and Mark Hamill. I remember those.
And Snoop Dogg. Do you remember the Snoop Dogg situation?
Yes.
I think someone was posing with their dogs in front of the Snoop Dogg star, which is hilarious. And a really neat thing is we went over to the exit to the Lowe's Hollywood Hotel, and there's a big mall shopping area there with multiple levels. So we went up a couple of levels, and we videoed them building the red carpet experience itself, and that was pretty cool. What did you think about that?
It was really cool to like see where we would be later in the night. Like obviously we would see it later, but it was just cool to get a preview.
Because it is just a street that is completely transformed. The red carpet is down there. And they built a room that was completely sealed off, so you didn't know what was inside. There were some hedges and shrubberies that were wheeled in to create sort of a walkway, and they put up these tents. So it's a very secure private affair, and people are working around the clock. And it led into the Mann's Chinese Theater itself. And that, to me, that just builds all the excitement. Also, I did a quick video in front of the Chinese Theater to hype everything that was going to happen. Thanks to my cameraman, Mason Zaire, for doing that. Then we met up with Clayton Sandell and his son, Alex. We went to In-N-Out Burger, and then we went over and sat in the outdoors in their pool area, and we looked over behind us, and sitting at the table behind us was Brendan Wayne. Who's that?
The Mandalorian.
He is the Mandalorian, and we left him be. He was with his family, and they were just relaxing before the experience that night. But when he walked away, I said, Mason, look, he even walks like the Mandalorian. It's just like his natural gait, his natural step. And that was really, really cool. But then it was time to go back to the hotel, get ready. So Mason had his suit. He looked awesome, looked ready for Hollywood. And then it was time to progress to the actual premiere itself. The premiere itself was mind-blowing. I definitely want to talk about it, but I want to know what you thought, just kind of walking through security, that whole setup.
It's like awesome that we were invited to that, and then we can go see the movie and just have a great time.
And what do you think of like the process of walking into the red carpet, getting our IDs, all that stuff?
That was cool because you see like how much work goes into it and like how much they want you to have fun.
It's true. So when we were walking to check in, we saw Katie Sackhoff, who was just standing there waiting for stuff. And so at these situations, to kind of put it in perspective for people listening, the stars are there, more people than we even imagined. And sometimes you have a good opportunity to go up and say hello, take a picture, and just thank them for their great work. And sometimes they're just very busy and they're working, so you just kind of let them be. So here are a handful of the people that we saw. We actually talked to a few of them, which we'll talk about here in a second. But we saw Katie Sackhoff. We saw Ming-Na Wen, who plays Fennec Shand. We saw Emily Swallow, who plays the armor. She was getting popcorn in the theater itself. I'm going to try to think in order the people we saw. Besides that, we saw Vanessa Marshall. She came right up to us and said hello, which was really cool. She introduced herself to Mason, and she told him how she's known his dad, which of course is me, for a long time, and that she talks to people about how I use Star Wars in the classroom, which was really, really nice. We had a nice greeting. What'd you think of her?
She was really nice.
Yeah, she was really nice. And then we saw Paul Sun-Hyung Lee, who plays Carson Teva. He had this great looking mustache. Like he was dressed to the nines, and he was over by the Enzelin spacecraft, which was right in the middle. It was the actual prop from the movie, I believe, that you could look at, but you couldn't get too close to. We also saw, this was a fun one for me, we saw Rich Eisen, who is one of the main anchors on the NFL Network. He was very famous for hosting SportsCenter for a while, so he just kind of walked by with his family. So he said, "Hey, it's Rich Eisen," and he was very busy, so he kept walking. We saw Ahmed Best, who of course is Jar Jar Binks. I spent some time with James Waugh, who works for Lucasfilm, who was a great guy and a good friend of mine. And we met James's son, who was a really charming kid, and that was fun too. Who else did we see? Who am I missing?
Amon Esfandi.
Yeah, we saw Amon Esfandi, who of course plays Ezra Bridger, and this was cool. We were walking into the theater, and he was up right before me. He had this great-looking white jacket on, and I said, "Hey, man, thanks for breathing some life into our guy, Ezra." He said, "Oh, thank you so much." He introduced himself, shook my hand. Then he turned and shook Mason's hand. He was a really, really friendly guy. And then I got to actually see this. Coming up behind him was Steve Bloom, and somebody said, "Hey," to Iman. They said, "Hey, you want to meet Zeb?" And he was like, "What?" So we turned around, and there was Steve Bloom, and they gave each other a big hug, and they were both like, "Oh, I couldn't wait to meet you. I'm so glad we finally got to meet." So it was cool to be a part of that and to experience that itself. Naturally, one of the most exciting parts of us, for the whole thing for us, is whereas we're walking in, because after a while you can congregate only for so long, and then they start rushing you into the theater itself. And someone said, "Hey, it's Pedro." So we turned, and Pedro Pascal was close enough for us to shake his hand, and we looked and we made eye contact with him. We said hello. He was very, very smiley, very, very friendly, and that was pretty cool. What do you think of that?
It was really cool to be that close to the actors.
And then a really fun thing happened. We turned, and there was Brendan Wayne again, but this time, because he's on the red carpet, I felt like it was okay to go up and say hello. So we did, and we just started chatting, and he was really, really cool, really, really gracious. I mentioned something about being an educator, and he was so kind about the profession of education. He went out of his way to talk to Mason and I. We got some pictures together. He was just a really, really cool guy. Then something happened that Mason and I were so excited about. I look over, and if you're listening to this and you don't watch professional wrestling, this probably won't mean very much to you. But if you watch WWE, you understand what a big deal this is. I look up, and I see Chelsea Green, and I see her husband, Matt Cardona. And Mason and I said, "Mason, it's Chelsea Green." So we raced over there. For those who don't know, Chelsea Green is one of the most popular female WWE superstars. She's got a massive following. She's really, really great with kids and appearances and things like that. And her husband, Matt Cardona, just recently came into WWE after a little bit of an absence. And he's a huge Star Wars fan, a huge toy collector. And I just knew that we'd have a lot in common. So we ran over there, introduced ourselves to them, talked to them for a little bit, and they were amazing. And so I don't know about you, but when I see Star Wars celebrities or people of that ilk, it's very, very exciting. But when I saw these WWE superstars, I was extra nervous, and I think I fanned out, which is a cardinal rule not to do. But they were both very, very gracious. And then we saw Raquel Rodriguez, who's also in WWE and also very much an icon. And she was very, very charming. And all of them, all the celebrities we're talking about, they were all so cool to Mason, which of course is the most important thing to me. What was it like for you to be around so many celebrities and just in that atmosphere?
It was really cool to like see people that I knew but that didn't know me, and I just felt very comfortable.
Yeah, and you definitely handled it like a champ. It was really, really fun for me to see. And that whole experience probably took an hour maybe or so. And as far as that room that we mentioned earlier that was covered up so you couldn't see it, that was basically like a scene from the film. There were all kinds of vendors in there. They had one of the speeders on display. They had a number of the thermal detonator Coke, Diet Cokes, and Sprites. And it was just a cool atmosphere where you feel like you're part of it. They've got the soundtrack playing in the background. And then it was time to go in there and actually watch the movie. When you go to a premiere, you have assigned seats. You don't have to worry about where to sit. And before it started, so we sat by Keith and Kerwin from Father Son Podcast. James sat to our left. And before the movie was about to start, I ran to the restroom. And on the way back, I walked down this separate ramp. And right in front of me was Jon Favreau, surrounded by a couple people. So when he walked into the theater and people started clapping and noticing him, I was in the line too. So for like a brief second, it looked like I was a part of it. So I just kind of smiled and kept walking like I was supposed to be there. It was just a happy coincidence. Then John went down and he made a speech before the movie, and I'm going to play that for you right now.
I just wanted to give a few thank yous. I'd like to thank Lucasfilm and Walt Disney for making this possible and giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the California Film Commission and allowing us to have a tax incentive here and allowing this to be the first Star Wars movie to ever be made in Los Angeles. I want to thank the cast and crew, California Crews, best in the world. Thank you very much. And Mother's Day just passed, so let's give a big thank you to the moms who are both here and in our hearts. I want to wish a happy birthday to both my wife and George Lucas, which I chalk that up to a glitch in the Matrix, but thank you and happy birthday. And I also want to thank the legacy of this theater. For those of you who don't know, this is the Chinese theater. This is where Star Wars, 49 years ago to the month, started here. This is where it all began. And because of the world that George Lucas created, we're still telling Star Wars stories. The baton has been passed down to other filmmakers, but here we are. Hopefully we'll get some of that magic and some of that energy here. And I also want to say a big special thank you, because back 49 years ago, I got to see Star Wars when I was 10 years old, and that movie changed my life from that first shot. And my dad took me to see it. I sat by his side. He pointed things out, explained to me how cool it was that the X-Wings had oil stains. He later taught me about Kurosawa and all the influences, and Hidden Fortress, all the influences, and opened the door for me to love not just Star Wars, but cinema. And I sat by my dad's side 49 years ago watching Star Wars for the first time, and tonight I'm getting to sit next to my dad and watch this movie. So thank you, Dad. Without my dad, I don't know if we'd have any of this. So thanks for sharing with your son your love of movies and being a good dad. And this movie is about a guy who I like to think of as a good dad, too. All right, thank you all. Let's start the show.
Then the movie started, and we had the advantage of seeing it a second time in less than 24 hours, where we had no expectations. We could just enjoy the film. And what was it like watching it the second time compared to the first?
I liked how I could relax and not really pay attention to what was going on, but definitely pay attention to the lesser details.
Right, so you can kind of soak it all in. And I don't know about you, but I felt like I enjoyed the movie even more the second time. I was able just to embrace the fun. What we can say about the movie, because this is coming out before the embargo is lifted, is that it's a ton of action, a ton of adventure, some really cool characters, and it's just so much fun. And I also think it's fair to say it's an absolute showcase for Grogu and all of his cuteness. So one thing I should say before we talk about the end of the movie, I got to be a part of an amazing round table where I got to interview Dave and John. I may have mentioned that before, but it all is kind of a blur. So I'm going to play. You can certainly listen to or watch the entire interview with a number of my podcast and fan site peers. Right now, I'm just going to play for you the question that I asked Dave and John and their answers. Hello, gentlemen. Dan Zayer, Coffee with Kenobi. It's pretty clear, from everything we've seen, and of course, right now, that you two don't get along at all. So hopefully, you can figure out a way to bridge that gap. So it's the great thing about my day job. I'm a high school English teacher, and every Friday we do Mando Fridays.
Oh wow!
And
hey,
so
thank you
that
for
is
doing that gig. My dad's a teacher. My mom was a teacher. We appreciate you and what you're doing, and regardless of the Star Wars of it all, I'm happy to hear somebody like you who's passionate. So you sound like you care about it. It's a big deal.
I think it's the greatest. So I appreciate that. Well, it's great because I incorporate different kinds of myths from all over the world, different cultures.
It's great.
And then we capitalize on that every Friday with the Mandalorian, and even the most indifferent or apathetic to my students. Once we get to this, it becomes something they're so hungry for. They love these characters and the story and the myth. So how do you see the magic of that and the wonder of that translated into the big screen?
Well, the trick that George leaned into was he's reading from the old book. He was coming up with ideas and stories. He was inspired by Flash Gordon, among other things. But if the stories are true, it was when he really just created this overlay of archetypes in the monomyth and understanding the mythic structure of storytelling, and he applied that to the script and applied that ultimately to the edit, that it sang. It came together. Because when you plug into that, you're plugging into a tradition, you're plugging into something that's baked into humanity's firmware for thousands of years. And he understood, because of his study of Joseph Campbell and discussions with Joseph Campbell and everyone Joseph Campbell was aggregating, all the storytelling traditions. When you do that, you start to surf a wave that was there long before you, and you're a link in a chain, as his museum points out, by the way, that this is an intergenerational tradition. The big screen offers us an opportunity to explore other aspects of what inspired George. Part of what got us through the smaller scope of the storytelling from streaming was we embraced not just what George did, but what influenced George, and so we leaned into the samurai film, into the Western. But arguably the largest influence on Star Wars was Flash Gordon and the serialized cliffhangers, the matinee cliffhangers that he grew up with. And even to the point that, episode 4 was episode 4, even when that was a standalone. Because he felt that, when he was a kid, he'd jump into the middle of a story and have to enjoy it and not understand the entire context, which I thought was kind of clever. Of course, now it's a fully fleshed out story, but at the time, he didn't know that would be the case. What could we do? How could we make it look like Flash Gordon, and not the Flash Gordon that existed, but the Flash Gordon in the imaginations of the baby boomers who watched it and then made these A+ versions of these cliffhangers, like Indiana Jones and Star Wars. And so you have the Lucas Spielberg generation that brought this level of technical innovation to it, with the Stan Winstons and the Rob Bottin's, that whole generation of creature makers and stop motion, the Tippets of the world, and of course later even ILM and the miniatures and the motion control miniatures and CGI. We could embrace something much bigger and more ambitious for the big screen. It's IMAX. We can build sets. We don't have to rely on a flexible stage like the Volume to turn the project around less than a year. It was a very helpful tool. We still used it, but in a much different capacity. And now we're using it to create reflections, interactive light, building it, adding it to existing sets. But you can't do the same magic trick over and over again. But what you can do is bring to life different set pieces that we never would have imagined that we could. So the giant CG creatures, Rada in CG, Zeb, Dragon Snake, the pit, showing the planet of Nalhutta, showing what all of that looks like. That opened up. We had a whole other section of the toy department available to us that we never had in the TV show.
So then after that, and I do play that for context, we walked up, again, I introduced myself to Dave, reintroduced myself to Dave, and I said, hey, I was a teacher mode before, and his eyes, he just lit up, and he said, oh yeah, he goes, it's very different when you're watching on a small screen. You're much bigger now. We had kind of a chuckle about that. And then I said, Dave, this is my son, Mason Zare. And he goes, and he shook Mason's hand. He said, hey, nice to see you. What do you think about meeting Dave Filoni?
It was cool that, like, the people that you see on TV and stuff, they're not really how you see them on TV. They also, like, have their own lives and are very kind.
Right, yeah. Again, major props to anybody who is, like, goes out of the way to just be super friendly to kids, especially, of course, to Mason, which I'm biased naturally, but I will own that. And so that was great. We had a nice little moment with him, and then he had to be whisked off to another event. And we walked out. In the theater itself, we saw everyone who was in the movie. In addition to the people we mentioned, Johnny Coyne was there. He plays a really important character. He plays Lord Johnny Coyne, and we but we saw Hemke Madera, who is the Imperial. Hello, thanks, dogs. He is the Imperial who is in the beginning of the film. We won't spoil anything about that. And it's so early, we don't even have a cast list, but I met one of the main muscles for the Coyne character. And after the film, I went up and I shook his hand, told him he did a great job. And he is such a big guy that his whole hand, similar to when I shook Peter Mayhew's hand, just kind of swallowed mine because he's such a big presence, but he was very, very gracious. Then on the way out of the theater, I introduced Mason to Matt Wood, of course, who was another ILM legend and the voice of General Grievous. He was also very, very cool. And then it was time to just kind of unwind. We hung out with Clayton Sandell and his son, and then James Burns and a few others, and just sort of reflected on an amazing day.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Next day, we woke up super early and flew home. And then by the time we got home, it was time to go to bed again so Mason could run track sectionals. He did a fabulous job. So Mason, overall, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed having this experience with you. And I think you were born to be on the red carpet. You did a great job. You're an awesome wingman. And I'm so grateful that I got to have all this fun with you.
It was so much fun. I mean, coming in, I know it was going to be a 10 out of 10, but it ended up being 11 out of 10.
Very good. Well, we will be back with so much more coverage of The Mandalorian and Grogu. This is Dan Zare and Mason Zare signing off. We will see you very, very soon. For all things Star Wars, news, reviews, videos, and more, head to our home base, coffeewithkenobi.com. Don't forget to join the CWK Cafe on Facebook at coffeewithkenobi.com/community, our family-friendly, spoiler-free group for all your Star Wars thoughts, comments, and conversation. This podcast is possible thanks to the incredible support of the CWK Alliance. Want to help keep the show brewing? For as little as $1 a month, you can join the CWK Alliance and get access to CWK Pour-Over, our exclusive weekly audio and video podcast. Learn more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. And know this, 10% of your monthly contributions goes directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. Want to connect? You can email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. Follow me on X at Mr. Zare, MRZEHR, Instagram, Threads, at DanZareCWK, and Blue Sky. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can follow Coffee with Kenobi across social media on X, Instagram, Threads, Pinterest, and Blue Sky, and give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. If you want to send an email to the show, you can email us feedback at coffeewithkenobi.com. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you'll find over 700 videos, including past live shows, events, and this podcast. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps more Star Wars fans find our little corner of the galaxy. Do you need a speaker for your next event? Visit danzmedia.com. I love to discuss mythology, leadership, storytelling, or create something tailored to your audience. And finally, grab your CWK gear at coffeewithkenobi.com/shop and show your support in style.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.